good afternoon or evening, whatever it may be where you are. Thank you very much for joining me today. It's Allan Labucan. I'm the founder, show host at Allan Reports. And one of the things that we like to do is have like a due diligence conversation with companies that we follow in the reports. Today I have Newrange Gold's Bob Archer on the handle, and we're going to talk about their Pamlico project in Nevada. I made them a pick because they recently did some twinning of a hole using a different drill method that returned a lot more gold. So we're going to get into that. And I love Nevada projects just because if things go well, the companies tend to get a nice Nevada premium. So on that note, thanks very much for joining us today, Bob.
My pleasure, Allan. Good to meet you and be on the show.
As I mentioned prior to coming online, what we'll do is I'm going to go to a screen share, and I'm going to pull up your corporate presentation, and then we can discuss that so that my audience can get a better handle. But before we get into the corporate presentation, Bob, I wanted to ask you about this quote on your website on the front page.
Mm-hmm.
You're very excited about the potential of Pamlico, mining history, lack of modern exploration, real sleeper. I'm not knowing if you used that sleeper for a reason, and major discovery potential. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that quote?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're well aware that there is a mine in Nevada called the Sleeper Mine, and so maybe a little bit of play on words, I guess, to some degree. But it really could be that type of a project because it really hasn't seen any or much in the way of modern exploration, given that the property's been privately owned since 1896, I believe, and it was optioned off a couple of times, once in the late 90s and once in the early 2000s, and then got turned back to the owners. But we don't have a lot of that data, or anything we do have is, for the most part, not 43-101 compliant. So we're kind of starting almost from scratch with this project, but given that it was in production in the 1800s, late 1800s, and a little bit again in the 1920s, there's a kind of a track record, if you like. There's a history of mining on the project, and so we know that there's gold there. And when it was in production, it was considered to be one of the highest grade gold districts in Nevada. So we've pulled some pretty spectacular samples of coarse visible gold from the old mine dumps. We know that that's what the old timers were chasing, and their cutoff grade was probably about an ounce per ton or something like that. So it's one of these projects that there's lots of gold around. It's been mined before, but never really properly explored. So that's kind of the opportunity and the challenge for us. So I think it really is very exciting. I mean, as you probably know, I'm an exploration geologist myself. So projects like this get my juices flowing, so to speak.
Well, if they don't, then you're in the wrong business, I guess, Bob.
That's right.
Now, before we get to we get off the subject, is there geological similarities to the Sleeper, or was it just a play on words? That is there more to the story than just the name?
No, it was just intended to be a bit of a play on words. I can't say that I have firsthand knowledge of the Sleeper Mine. Robert Carrington may. He has a lot more experience in Nevada than I do. But it was really just intended to be a play on words.
Okay, so now, when you what caught my attention of relate and why I made you guys a pick was the twinning of the holes that you had done RC on the holes, came in with the drill core, and not only did you see a significant change in the lower grade material, but there was quite a difference on the high grade. I think it suggests that maybe core is the way to go, or I know it's only one hole so far.
Yeah, and that's, we got to be careful in terms of making too many generalizations based on a single hole. There are still 3 more to come in, and we're waiting for assays. But yeah, essentially the preliminary indications from that hole are that we may well have been losing gold from the RC, just because the rock is so highly fractured, and with the high air pressure in the RC method, it could be just blowing some of the fine gold into the fractures and not really recovering it.
Is most of the gold mineralization fine grained?
It's difficult to say at this point whether it would be most, but certainly some of it is. We've with the sampling that's been done up to date, Robert has panned a number of samples and not come up with any visible gold at all, even in samples that were running over 300 grams per ton. So we know that a lot of it is very fine grained. We've yet to do some detailed mineralogy on it to get any real statistics in that regard. But from the metallurgical work that we have done so far, the cyanide shake assays and then the bottle roll test, the really high recoveries that we're getting from cyanide leach sort of imply that the gold is very fine and it goes into solution extremely well. There's no silica encapsulation. It's not tied up in sulfides. It's not refractory. There's no graphite. There's nothing like that. So looking down the road, whether it's us or someone else that puts it in production, knowing that the metallurgy is going to be extremely positive only adds to the value of the project.
Okay, so now you've got this potential game breaker with the difference. I mean, it gives you a chance to reevaluate all of your previous holes, and then you've got the recovery. So I guess, is it fair to call it a potential game changer?
I think so in some respects. Certainly, it's metallurgy can really make or break a project. I've seen quite a few projects in the past that have really poor metallurgy, and that just kills it outright. And projects that have multiple millions of ounces of gold in the ground, but if it can't be properly recovered or economically recovered, then it's effectively worthless unless you're looking at a $2,000-3,000 gold price. But on something like this, with positive metallurgy, yeah, I'd say it really is a game changer for the project.
And that's just first pass recovery. You would still have to fine tune everything, but as far as that goes, you're in good shape, it looks like.
Yeah, that having the cyanide shake assays and then the follow-up bottle roll tests, especially the bottle rolls, those gave us a very good indication of what the what the recoveries could be. And we, of the 4 composite samples that we sent in, we got recoveries ranging from 73% up to 97%. So very, very encouraging results. And the next step will be column leach tests and potentially a bulk sample that we should be able to take from the bottom of the Merritt decline as well.
Well, that's an interesting thing I want to ask you about too, is the amount of work that you can do from underground, but such as channel sampling, and you can then plug that all into GIS that gives you a fairly big footprint to work in. I mean, it's one thing to have the right metallurgy, but you also have to have something to recover.
Yes, of course.
So tell us about that, where we go with that.
Well, there are two aspects to the underground. One is what we call the Merritt decline itself, which is effectively a ramp, kind of an angled tunnel that goes down about 600 feet, about 200 meters. And that was put down by the Merritt family that owns the project. And so, and that was around 2013, so not very long ago. They were chasing kind of the high grade veins to a large degree, but our team sampled the walls of the decline as well, and came back with an average grade of about 3 grams per ton over 75.5 meters going down the ramp. So we know that there's something a little bit more sizable there, and so we can continue to do some more work in that underground tunnel. And once we get the permits transferred from the family to Newrange, our hope is to be able to take a bulk sample from the bottom of the decline in some of that high grade material, and then test that out or do extensive metallurgical testing on it, basically see what the recoveries are like, and whatever gold we recover from the bulk sample, obviously we'll be able to keep that or sell it rather, and that'll provide a little bit of revenue for the company as well. The other aspect is just on your screen there is the LiDAR scanner. That's something that's underway right now.
I'm sorry. If you let me talk for a second here,
yes,
I can tell people what you're talking about. If you look at my screen here, this is the LiDAR scanner, and this is the image that it projects based upon the underground mapping and sampling, I believe. But I'll leave that to Bob to describe. But as you can see here, that's sort of where all the underground working is. Am I correct there, Bob?
Well, it's a portion of it. We have we estimate about 8,000 meters of underground workings. So it's very, very extensive. There are over 300 old tunnels and adits and so on going into the hills around the property. So it is pretty extensive, and it'll take a while to cover all of that. But so this is just the first part that we've been able to do. And the colors represent the different levels. So it's a little bit of a kind of an isometric view here, where the blue is the lower levels, and then going to green, and then yellows and reds in the upper levels. So that's the color just represents the elevation, and that's just a view, kind of if you were outside looking in. And what we hope to have by PDAC next week is a computer model of the inside of the tunnels as well, which if you've viewed the demo of the company, not our company, but the company that produces the technology, they have a demo on YouTube that demonstrates this, and it's a little bit like walking through a video game. It's very, very
and the drilling that you've done, where does it is it represented in that model? Are you outside of what is known, and whereabouts are you drilling?
The drilling that's been done to date would not show up in this model. Most of the drilling that's been done was just off of the end of the decline, and then these underground workings are going into the hills, so a little bit more to the south and southeast. So this is giving us a good view of where the workings are. There were just a couple of holes drilled in that general area. But unfortunately, we don't have any previous maps or plans or sections of the underground workings, and so not knowing where they are, one of the holes unfortunately drilled into one of the underground workings, and the rods got jammed, and we lost part of the drill string, which gets pretty expensive. So this underground survey will tell us exactly where the tunnels are, so that we can avoid them with future drilling. Plus, it gives us an exact location for the underground sampling as well, such that anything that we do come up with in the underground sampling, or even later in the drilling, can be added into a 43-101 resource as well, because we'll know exactly where the samples were taken.
And so now here I've got on the screen the various different zones. In blue, there is the Merritt decline that we were talking about. I see in red, that must have been the new drilling. And then you've got all these larger zones, Pamlico Ridge, East EW zones. They seem to be following some interesting structures there. The pediment area, the big East Zone North, and East Zone South. Can you put that into some context for us, Bob?
Yeah, sure. This just gives a kind of a representation of why we consider this to be district scale potential, because we have multiple targets, and just the Pamlico Ridge area itself, extending down to the southeast, is about 2.5 kilometers long. And if you include Pamlico Ridge, the area of the Merritt Decline, and Gold Box Canyon, which are all running more or less subparallel, that area is about 1 kilometer wide. So it is a sizable area, and it's open in all directions at the moment. As I said, most of the drilling that we have done has just been off the end of the Merritt Decline, just following up on some of the results that they got from the underground.
That in red there. By the way, folks, this is the corporate presentation you can find on the website, and we're on page 9 here. The red area is where you drilled. Is that correct, Bob?
Yeah, that's where the majority of the drilling has been located. There are a few scattered holes outside of that, just testing some other little targets, or some ideas on structure and that sort of thing. But the bulk of it's within that red area.
And where are we going forward from here? Is all of these zones going to be looked at, or will you continue in the Pamlico Ridge, or what's the story?
Well, ultimately, we hope to test all of them. This year, we would like to step out sort of incrementally from the drilling that's been done, in order to begin to, two things, I guess, get a better understanding of the actual controls on the mineralization, but also to enlarge the footprint, enlarge the zone, such that we can start to put together a maiden resource. We'd like to have that by the end of the year, if possible, if we can get enough drilling done. But some of the near-term targets include Gold Box Canyon, Pediment area, and certainly parts of Pamlico Ridge. The East Zone, north and south, are a little bit more grassroots. They've been mapped to some degree, a few outcrop samples. There are some scattered gold values around, but no drilling. So we'll try to move those targets forward such that we can develop drill targets at some point. But the East Zone, I'm guessing, won't be drilled until next year.
So it sounds like this green area is sort of where all your focus is contained.
For the most part, that's where most of the work has been done today.
Okay, so that's the focus going forward, is to finish off more well, first of all, you've got the most immediate stuff, which is your continuing of your metallurgy, and then more data from the twinning of RC holes with core. So that's pretty much lays out the rest of this year, correct, Bob?
Yeah, pretty much. That's going to be a fairly intensive program between the drilling and the metallurgy. So, testing these various targets, there's a lot to do, a lot of targets there. It's a nice position to be in, and the access is great on the project. We're right off the main highway between Reno and Las Vegas. It's an easy drive on an all-weather road. just about 7 miles off that highway, just outside the town of Hawthorne. So it's super easy to get to. Even in terms of site visits, you could actually leave Reno in the morning, go down to the site, have a visit, and back to Reno for dinner.
Yeah. Exploration.
Yes, yeah, very much so. I mean, it does get a little chilly out there this time of year. It's very dry climate, but it can get quite cold. But nonetheless, still able to work there year round. And just speaking of dryness, actually, I should mention that we've determined through the drilling that the level of oxidation here goes down to about 300 meters in some places. So that's very, very significant from a mining perspective, open pit especially, and processing, with the leaching and so on. So we don't anticipate seeing a lot of sulfides, which can potentially, cause processing problems. If it's all oxide, then we can mine this to pretty good depths with really excellent recoveries.
That turned, what might be considered lower grade into high margin gold.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it does. That can significantly change the economics.
Excellent. So, cash, how's the cash position to do all these efforts?
We're fine right now as far as funding the ongoing work, but to start up the drills again and get going with a substantial drill program, we'll be looking at a financing down the road, maybe after PDAC sometime, perhaps before the end of March.
I would imagine your phone's starting to ring a little bit more these days, Bob.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've just been on a marketing trip through New York and Toronto as well, and getting lots of interests. It's nice with the gold price coming back up. It's nice to see the sentiment changing, and people are actually responding now. So it's great.
Well,
they pick up the phone when you call them.
From my perspective, I've always enjoyed doing a lot of these shows to help people understand the industry and write lots of reports, but for a couple of years there, I was thinking I was speaking into a vacuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't we make that the last point to talk a little bit about Bob? How do you feel about gold going forward, and how are you feeling about exploration and specifically Nevada, if you want to highlight that?
Well, I'm certainly bullish on the metal prices going forward. I think we've been in a lousy market now for must have been about 8 years. So it's been a pretty long one. And gold and silver in particular have been forming a really nice base for the last number of years. And we had a bit of a teaser rally in 2016, but it didn't last very long. And so, we've been more or less range bound for quite a while now, and the longer that goes, the more powerful the upticks. So, if we can break out of this range, then I'm really positive, really optimistic about the future beyond that. Nevada itself, I've always loved Nevada. I spent 15 years in the early part of my career working for Newmont, Placer Dome. They had mines down there, and I went down, multiple times on mine tours and property visits and so on. But I never really got a chance to actually work there, and I've always wanted to work in Nevada. So that was one of the appealing things about this project and this company for me is just getting a chance to do what I've wanted to do for a long time, and getting back to my exploration roots. So after Great Panther and the production side of things, just getting back to the excitement of early stage exploration and discovery.
Well, you picked the next spot to do that, Bob, because you've got good climate, good access, low cost exploration. These are all the hallmarks of what I'm looking for these days in the companies I follow in my reports. I think it's crucial to have those things because everything is so expensive nowadays that it's really easy for juniors to get an out of control stock structure. And then it doesn't really even matter what you find. Well, not.
Yeah, now I get your point. Yes.
you get my point, right? And so
Right. Yeah.
you got to be excited for the low cost exploration, but the phenomenal geology you have there in Nevada as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's the project has a lot of really positive things going for it.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Bob, I really appreciate you coming on. Why don't we end it today? And as you guys get more data, would you come on again and we can talk some more about how things are progressing?
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me know and I'll keep in touch.
They sure make it easy these days with online cameras and everything, eh, Bob?
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, I can do this from pretty much anywhere in the world, really.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot again. And I'm going to close things off and say, folks, before you make any investment decisions, it's always important for you to do your homework and speak with your financial advisors. And I'm very big on the homework. That's obviously why I do these shows. And Newrange is one you want to check out. I think you want to do your homework on the company. Primarily the quality of the project, the valuation, and the potential for the Nevada premium. I harp on this a lot, but the fundamental reasons of why this project is a good exploration project is why the Nevada premium happens. You have low cost exploration. You can do it year round. You're not confined to certain parts of the season. You can get in and out of there on roads. He said just a branch road takes you from the highway. These are key fundamentals of what I look for in companies, and for that matter, in the company that I run, Advanced Gold, that is sponsoring the show today. So I think I did all my jobs here as an interviewer, and I hope you check out Newrange and look forward to my additional commentary and future shows with Robert. On that note, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.